This is from Pro Football and Sports Network. They rank one potential AFC breakout player for each team. For the Browns, they say Mike Hall Jr., who had his rookie season cut short with issues legally. Then he got hurt. What about the group of these defensive tackles that have added? We'll throw Hall into this group. So it's Hall, Mason Graham, and Malik Collins. Do they move the needle on this defensive line, do you think, at all for you?
Absolutely. And I would throw Jawan Briggs in there as well. You mentioned Mike Hall's season was sort of cut short, but the issue with Hall coming out of college at 20 years old is you're sitting there going, how is he going to hold up against NFL strength? And he came in and played the run better than I thought he would. And I've seen him play, dating back to high school for 3 years. He was way better in that aspect in a lot of ways. In fact, the Browns' run defense improved with Hall in the field. He's got a ton of ability as a pass rusher. And then to me, if you're sitting there and you're looking at last year's draft and you start sitting there frustrated with like Zach Sinter because he was injured or stuff, Jawan Briggs, after he was on the practice squad, after he came back and changed numbers, was a new man and was really impressive down the stretch. So you take those two guys and you're sitting there and you go, this is a nice little group foundation. You add Malik Collins, who it's just very strange to me because he's a huge acquisition that hasn't got a whole lot of attention. Some of that is he was released by the San Francisco 49ers, so there's sort of an unsexy quality to picking up another guy that was released. And then he wasn't at OTAs or anything because he's one of those guys who does his own thing. But he was second on the 49ers in pressures on a team that was loaded with talent and expectations. He had 45 pressures. The number 2 guy on the Browns last year was Dalvin Tomlinson with 36. If he can give another 45 pressures, the Browns are going to sign up for that immediately. And then you add in Mason Graham, who's an excellent player as a prospect, and he can play the nose, he can rush. They expect big things from him. And then the guy I wouldn't forget from that is Shelby Harris. And I know he's getting up there at 34 years old, but like for a guy who they basically gave practically nothing for, he's been 2 years of excellent veteran presence as a 3-tech. That group's really talented, and I really like Jacques Césaire as a position coach. The expectations are high for that. There's going to be a lot of pressure on that group to deliver in a big way this year.
And if a lot of people don't look at this, but Jim Schwartz's defense usually has a stud defensive tackle that he hasn't had. Albert Hainsworth, Fletcher Cox, Ndamukong Suh. And I'm not saying one of these guys is going to do that, but a guy that gets upfield and creates havoc in the middle kind of sets up what Jim Schwartz wants to do.
Right. I think Dalvin Tomlinson was a terrific player, but he was always sort of miscast for what Jim Schwartz wants to do. They had to get a guy. They took runs at Javon Hargrave and Draymond Jones, and thankfully they got neither one ultimately because those guys did not live up to the money they got paid. Dalvin Tomlinson was just rock solid. He's not a guy who's going to get up the field, save for the Steelers' snow game where he had 10 pressures. That's just not what he is. So, you move on from him and you get, 4 or 5 guys that fit exactly what Jim Schwartz wants. If Mason Graham turns into Ndamukong Suh, everybody's going to be really happy with that. If you can get Mike Hall to be Fletcher Cox, nobody's going to turn that down. But just the sheer number of guys, if they can get a superstar, great. But they just need solid contributions where it feels like wave after wave of guys who are consistently keeping up the pressure on both the run and the pass.